Okay. So we're live on
Hello.
TikTok, we're live on Instagram, and we're live on here, right? Hip it.
Yeah, Jim and I were just having a wee chat off camera there. Obviously, there's a few properties and things that you've maybe not forgot about, Jim, but just that you didn't realise were in the mix at this time in your journey. So we're going to cover that today. And I think you've got a few insights and things for us to cover.
Aye, well, just a
before we
few
kick
over
off.
about 13.
All
All of a sudden in my history and my documentation, I missed 13 properties, which actually meant I probably had a lot more when I retired in my first million than my first million. I was probably there quicker. I just didn't realise it. I just didn't realise it at all. I think that's the most important thing. Some of the lessons I've learned so far, though, and this is actually quite an interesting one. I was actually listening during the week. It's not the pursuit of happiness you should be after. That's really quite a selfish and shallow goal. Because happiness is like the sun; it goes out and in all the time. What you should want to be is the person that's built the ark when the flood comes.
Yeah,
that's a really profound statement, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's not the pursuit of happiness that you're after; it's you want to be the person that's built the ark when the flood comes. And I really mean that. Wow, what a position to be in! And this is literally what I was doing all throughout this process before I left my job and retired at 38. I was building an ark. I didn't know how big that arc needed to be at that point in time, but I needed to build that arc for myself to make sure that I was never, ever in a position that I had to go back to work again. This is what this lesson's all about. This is what we're talking about today in order to do that, but also some of the examples of the properties when I bought them and what I learned from them as well. Instantly enough, I was listening to a billionaire. I listened to a lot of billionaire stories. You get loads of them on YouTube. Noah, I'm not sure who Noah's second name is, but Noah talks about this all the time. Most people will know who Noah is. He actually sits and interviews billionaires and stuff like that. Rob Moore does it as well, and Diary CEO, Steve Bartlett does this as well. But it's the stories and the lessons that you learn from these people that are far more. Now, I've not got any desire to be a billionaire, to be honest. But the lessons and the information that you could learn and the wisdom you can gain from these people is astronomical. And more importantly, it's their failures I'm after. It's what they've learned from their failures. How did they fail, and what they've learned from their failures. That's the two things for me. And actually, the one thing, and parents, you're not going to like this. So I'll give you a complete disclaimer to education straight away. But some people out there might get it and think that's absolute sense to me. I was listening to this billionaire recently, and he said two things to become great in life, which can guarantee a good income and you to be wealthy and prosperous as well. There's two things that you can do. You can either stick in at school and become and with the mindset of becoming a professional in a profession. And that means sticking at school and going to university, maybe to be a doctor, to be a vet, to be a solicitor or a lawyer, to be an accountant, because they all require specific exams and specific measures of education levels in order to go on to do the professional exams and then do that as well. So yes, absolutely, you can stick in at school. But I tell you what, if you're not going to do that, you really have to become a great saver and investor if you're not doing anything like that. If you're not doing anything like that at all, and you're not working towards in your education to become into a profession, a proper profession, and you need that education level to get there, then just get the basic education, but become an outstanding saver and an outstanding investor at the same time. That's the two keys to guarantee your prosperity and your wealth. A good income and wealth as well. That's exactly what you should do. And I get that straight away. Most often for all of us, and this is key as well, life is forced upon us. Our choice is how we want to live it. So how do you want to live it? Think about that.
Yeah,
life
I think
is forced on everybody. It's how you want to live it.
Everybody does have that choice. Some people say, "Oh, I don't have a choice how I live."
But a lot of people out there, and myself included in the very beginning, thought that we didn't have a choice how we lived it. It was all predetermined for us.
Programmed for you and set out for you.
Our life was determined for us because we were basically led down this path of called a school and an education in order to get the result. I mean, look at Rishi Sunak now. No, people should know more about mathematics. Why? Why? Sorry? Why would that be? Oh, so you can work in the industries that you choose us to work in. You know, that's why he wants that thing. I think what he really meant out of it, though, people should be more aware, and what the real meaning of this was, of managing their money and saving their money and also budgeting their money. That's what he really meant by what the children of the youth of today need to know at an education level. So yes, absolutely, do your basic mathematics and your basic English and all the rest of it. Get a really good handle on it. But more importantly, the one thing it should be mandatory in every single school is business studies.
Yeah, like money management and budgeting and things. It's just something that's not taught, really.
Business studies gives you an introduction to business management. It gives you an introduction to how to handle people. It gives you an introduction to how to public speak, how to use the legal system, an introduction to how the legal system works, an introduction to how, you know, bookkeeping works, how the debit and credit process works, how to read accounts at the basic fundamental level, a profit and loss account and a balance sheet. That's key and essential. Now, most people won't think that they need to do that, but even for your own budget for your household, actually an income and expenditure account wouldn't go amiss for most people. That I've just seen in the now that you know, one of the foundations have come out just today after my broadcast last night. Actually, no, because of my broadcast, by the way. After my broadcast last night, I actually said all these shops have done bumper turnover this year.
Yeah, I heard that on news.
Yeah, Marks and Spencer's, Next, and all the rest of it, and that tells me straight away that a lot of people have spent on a credit card this year for Christmas, and so and it's been better than the year before for them. So that makes it even worse, especially if we're in this sort of cost of living situation that we are now. That means a lot of people have borrowed for Christmas. And this foundation today came out and said that it'll take years for some people to actually pay off that credit card for Christmas that they just spent there now.
There'll be a lot of people in that position.
Holiday company, holidays.co.uk just came out and said that now the average holiday that people are booking is £3,000. Sorry? What?
That's a lot of money.
And it's like, that's the average. That's average. It's like, my God, I've just got my 2 weeks in Spain and it's all under £1,000. And that's the end of August, the beginning of September. Admittedly, I've got my own place, but the point is, it's like that costs a blooming fortune to do normal holidays. So I reckon a lot of people might actually end up doing staycations.
Yeah, but then even at that as well, I mean, they're becoming pricey as well.
I thought staycations were going to disappear, but I think they might be here to stay while people cut their cloth.
Yeah.
To suit their budget. So I definitely think staycations is probably here to stay. That's probably a really good point to point out that. But let's get down to brass tacks.
Yes.
Where did we finish off, Richard?
We finished off. You just finished speaking about your property, 3-bedroom semi-detached house in quite a popular area of Leavan, and then we're going on now to a 1-bedroom apartment that you've got, where we still have at the moment.
Yeah, this was my first introduction to a property over commercial premises.
That's right,
and you know, and it's with NatWest still, because I got a lifetime tracker at base plus 0.99. It's like, what? So, and I've still got that lifetime tracker today, but it was the first time I'd actually got over commercial premises, and NatWest were the only company that was going to do it. And I think NatWest is the only company that still does normal buy-to-let over commercial premises. So if anybody's looking for buy-to-let over commercial premises, NatWest is probably the buy-to-let lender to go to. I don't think, don't quote them on it. Some mortgage brokers out there might be able to tell them otherwise on TikTok or Instagram or any of these channels, Facebook and YouTube. They might be tell them otherwise if Birmingham Midshires or possibly the Mortgage Works do it as well, but I don't think they do. It also taught me quite a valuable lesson in terms of, what would I say, over the years it's had its challenges, this one. It's been a bit self-contained because but the thing about it, what I loved about it the most, was it now warned me to buying properties right in the high street or next to the high street, because that's effectively where it was. So while it didn't have a garden, and I was always wanting, to buy properties by a garden, it was an upstairs, So there was nobody above that person. So you get the personal enjoyment of the property to yourself. But equally as well, it's right next to the high street. So you just walk out your front door and you're in between all the amenities you really need to get on with things. So it has a specific different type of market. Normal, a single professional or something like that.
Yeah.
But it is actually a good earner. I mean, what we're getting $395 on that just now.
Yeah.
My mortgage works out at £97 a month.
Yeah.
So almost clearing $300 a month in it. Now, admittedly, that was bought in 2004. So we're almost 20 years on. And that property was bought 30,781 all in at that time. And if I was to put it on the market today and try and sell it, I think probably 55 maybe.
Let's say 50, yeah.
So it's probably only gone up round about maybe 70, 80%, but it doesn't really matter to me. It's more importantly what cash it generates and how well it's occupied. And it tends to be occupied nearly all the time, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in between a couple of times, I think we decorated, and then the most recently, I think we just put a kitchen in. But apart from that, I don't think you've had any great expenditure on it as such. And it's been filled for numerous years now.
And have we changed the kitchen at some point? Just recently, yeah?
Just before the last tenancy.
Yeah, so just recently changed the kitchen, recently changed the heating system, and bathroom's still the same, I think.
Bathroom's still the same, yeah.
Bathroom was fine, wasn't it? It was really nice. So that's 20 years past, and that bathroom has still lasted perfectly well, and it's a really lovely bathroom.
It's in quite good condition. Yep.
And it's got great amount of storage up in the attic, and it's got a great amount of storage in the cupboards as well. So that's what I loved so much about it. And it wasn't a direct on the high street, so people walking past your window. It was an internal stairway going up. More importantly as well, you've got to watch out as well for, fly-by nights. I've got to admit, there was one day I did walk into this property, into the hall downstairs. I heard a wee bit a noise in the cupboard where the bins are usually kept. And lo and behold, I opened it and there's two boys shooting up.
Oh God!
It's like, and they're just sitting in the complete dark, and it's like, oh my God, what are you doing? Get in. It's like, go and do that somewhere else. And it's not that type of area. It was obviously they needed somewhere, so they thought they would just come in here. That's the importance of having a secure door entry system.
Yeah.
It didn't have it at that time, and that was the problem. Somebody had got in and they just sat in this wee cupboard, and they were just having whatever it was, whether it was heroin or that, and then just getting on with it. But that's where I got, this is the sort of thing I got introduced to. Like, I never thought there was any kind of drugs problem when you started to be a private landlord, and you started to see this round about you. Yeah. And you're like, oh my God, this is I wouldn't say it's rife, but it's the fact that it's something you have to deal with in people's lives.
I think, especially as an agent and things as well. Obviously, you're aware these things go on, but until you actually do something like a landlord or be a letting agent, and you're dealing with it like in the forefront every day, that's when you realise, like you say, like it's not rife, but it's there.
Yeah, if anybody wants to ask any questions, please feel free to ask. If you've got any comments, please feel free to make comments. If you're going, we hate private landlords, let's, pitchforks out and all the rest of it, jog on. Just go and watch something else. This isn't the channel for you. Don't waste your life watching me. That's what I would say to these people. There's no point. It's like you're going to have a go at me, but it doesn't make any difference to me at all. It just wastes your time. So if you're here and you're willing to listen, and you're willing to learn, and you want to make money, you want to increase your wealth, you want to have more prosperity in your life, then probably this is the one for you to talk about this. It stopped me. I tell you what, it still stopped me from retiring. I mean, we're on round about approaching 30 properties at this point in time. Remember, I was self-managing still. So I'm working as a financial controller, stroke financial director in a position. I'm at 30 properties almost by now, and I'm managing the whole lot myself still. So I'm taking phone calls during the day and stuff like that, and just trying to field, making sure that my tenants would phone me at night. They all knew I worked during the day, so they were phoning me at night. And some emergencies, they would text me, because I used all these different things. I used efficiency and what we call nowadays is AI. I was using that to the advantage, and and taking advantage of all the information technologies around about me in order to make things more efficient for me, so I could get messages to me quicker and I can get messages to my contractors quicker. So I was basically managing all my properties at the same time and doing that and having a real balance. Now, the reason I was doing that is because the objective of the exercise for me was I was never taking any money out of my business at all. I was living on my income I generated in my job. It's a great thing to be, because you can keep reinvesting all the profits that you make in upgrading your stock and also buying more stock as well.
Yeah.
And that's what I've always followed. I've never really taken any money out of my buy-to-let business from the very beginning. And folk are going, well, what's the point of doing it? It was the one-offs now and again that I did. You know, if I wanted to go on that holiday just to do the now to Jamaica, if I wanted to get my knee sorted through the private healthcare system, I was able to do that. All these things, if I wanted to help my brother, if I wanted to help my daughter buy her first house, I was able to do that. So that's the only reason that money would go there. I would never take anything else out. If you are self-managing, you do want to take something out, then I would recommend you probably just take out a percentage of your top line income, which is equivalent to what a letting agent would take out if you need money to survive. But in my context, it was like I reinvested everything. Never mind your 40, 30, 30, you know, Grant Cardone attitude. It's like, it was almost like 80% invested, 20% I'm going to live on. and even my day-to-day job, I was investing the money from that into buy-to-let and into property as well at the same time. So I was still doing all that, even though I had all this, what you would, and I never counted it either, because I thought at this point, if I started counting this and realized how much I really had and what I was really worth, would that have actually made me think, oh, I could retire quicker?
Or would it deterred you for what you were set out to do?
And my fear is I would never be where I am now if I hadn't, if I had done that. So it was never something I really counted. I just looked after the day-to-day and the detail and made sure the cash kept coming in, because the KPIs are right. You know, you've got the KPIs, which is the key performance indicators. If you keep an eye on the key performance indicators and make sure they're right, and I was always taught this from Willie McCall at ESA Macintosh when he was the operations director. Willie actually said, because I used to say to him, look, you know, is it no more important about the, you know, the profit, and you see the profit and loss every single month? And I went, no, Jim, no. He says, if the labour efficiency is right, if the material efficiency is right, if the yield's right, he says, and if the cost per hour is right, he said, everything else will fall into place.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, really? He says, that's the only thing. He says, these are about 5 things that I keep an eye on every single week or every single day. And because I keep an eye on these, at the end of the month, I'm guaranteed it's going to be a profit if these are right. And you see how we do that as well.
Yeah.
You know, same lesson. We know the key performance indicators in our business. We operate as letting agents and as estate agents. And even I know that in my own buy-to-let business. And if these key performance indicators are right, it's guaranteed at the end of the month there's a profit anyway. Yeah. So you don't need to sit and wait till the end of the month. You just keep an eye on your KPIs. Somebody actually asked me on TikTok, good question. Do all of your 30 properties have mortgages on them? Absolutely. It's like, absolutely. You do not want an unencumbered property, especially if you're making, at this point in time, my benchmark is 25% return on capital. 25%. I was in tears if I never made more than 25% every single time. And my key cash flow after my mortgage was paid, to have after the mortgage was paid, my key benchmark was £250 cash or more. Now, for me personally, I can't see and understand why anybody would want unencumbered if you're not getting a return on your capital, if that makes sense. If you're only making 4% or 3% or 2% in the bank, even if you're making 6%, and you've got the opportunity to take that and remortgage. And remember, my mortgage rate at that time was 7%, because I've still got old, you know, documentation in that and spreadsheets that I looked at. So my mortgages I was paying was 7%, and I was happy to pay 7% because my benchmark was 25% return on capital against that 7. So every single time on the mortgage getting paid, I was making before the overheads, I was clearing with the bank's money, I was clearing the differential, which is 18%. 18% return on investment after the mortgage is paid. Now see where that is. Now, most of these properties with a mortgage, that's 18% return on investment after the mortgage is paid. And then when you look at it, if you had it unencumbered, so you had no mortgage, your gross yield, which is the same measure with the amount of rent coming in versus the price of the property, because it's all paid for, would be round about probably 7%. 7% or 18%. I know which one I'm wanting. And that's without actually the appreciation included either, because that's the appreciation comes in the two scenarios anyway. So it was a comparable against their gross yield, which is all cash, all in, unencumbered debt, paid off completely, or it was also against your net yield, which is after the mortgage interest is paid, what is the yield now against your investment? That's the two differentials. So if one's making substantially more, then that's the one you go with. So absolutely, there's never a time I don't think I would ever not have a mortgage on a property, especially with the amount of return that you could make over and above that. And that's just me personally. I don't advise everybody to do that. It depends on your personal circumstances, but that's the way it is. Okay, just a quick one. I have no probs, 90k a year in rent, 2.5 net month, equity 900,000. Should I sell or buy later? Should I sell now, buy later? No, I would never sell. There's another thing. You've actually just nailed it. You've actually just reminded me of this. I have sold about 20 properties over the years. And I am a great believer, never chop down the tree that bears the fruit, unless there's an overriding circumstances. And I will talk about that right now and how I've done that. So let's just go on to talk about that one bedroom. And we got that. And then the next one I bought was in 2004, was another one bedroom. But actually 2005. Now I'll have to jump back here from here, but I noticed in 2005, this was a property I actually had there was a wee problem with outside. It looked a bit structural, and I did get a surveyor to look at it, but it didn't seem anything wrong with it, but it was a big crack down the side of the building. The surveyor went, no, there's nothing wrong with that really. But it came back to haunt me about 20 years later. Because then what had happened is the roof started to bow a bit. So I had to get some structural works done and I was lucky enough to do it. And it maybe cost me about £7,000 to get it done. So it's sorted now. So it was fine. It was a risk I took at the time when I had the severe structural, and most people would have walked away, which they did, but I actually didn't bother as much about that one. And today we're getting what, 350 on that. Again, another lifetime tracker of base plus 1.15. And that's what I say to you, and the guy on TikTok, whoever that is, or the person on TikTok, whether it's a girl or a guy, what I would say to you is, because I was getting them at base plus 1.15, base plus 0.99 for life as trackers, for life of the mortgage, and that's up till the 2030s and on, 2035 when these run out. I never wanted to let these go, hence the reason why I've still got them today. Because it's an easy gig. It's like literally 350 and the mortgage is 120 quid every month. So I'm clearing 230 quid for overheads. Plus the fact the property will appreciate. So I bought that one for 27,881. And it's probably a double in value since then. Yeah. Now, incidentally, at that time, this is where I digress. I actually looked last night and I found 1, 2, 3, 4, I thought 13 different properties that I forgot in between that I didn't realize was in existence. I actually started to buy through my limited company. This is where my limited company started in 2002. So if we go back in time 3 years to 2002, I set up a limited company deliberately. It was because everything was bought in Elaine's name. Okay? My wife. Because I was working and I was more or less going into higher rate tax. So the last thing I was going to do is buy properties in my own name to go into higher rate tax. And then everything was bought in Elaine's name because obviously at that time we were getting really good advantages of deduction of mortgage interest. We were getting the capital allowance. We were getting wear and tear allowance of 10% of top line rent for furnished properties. We were getting also our capital gains allowances if you ever sold. So there's huge tax advantages. Plus, Elaine wasn't earning income because she had retired years ago. She retired the day she got her redundancy money, and then I started investing her redundancy money in property. She retired that day to look after the kids. We had children after that because that was the planet we had wanted to do. So that allowed her to do that. So I started buying a limited company because she'd got to the threshold of the higher rate tax as well. I never knew about pensions, by the way, about contributing towards a pension to bring you down at that time. So I just immediately jumped in and says, okay, let's buy them in the limited company now. And at that time, again, it was quite difficult because it was 2002. Buy-to-let mortgages had just come online for individuals, but not for limited companies. So I had to go back to the old model again I had with the Bank of Scotland. The Bank of Scotland's been with me for the very beginning, by the way. I'm extremely loyal to them for that very reason, because they're the ones that helped me set me free, and many other people as well. So the Bank of Scotland actually decided to do term loans again with me on the limited company.
On the limited
I
company,
had a track record. It was really track record. It did everything. The track record I'd done. I remember walking into my bank manager one day with a plan about what I wanted to do, and I just presented it to him, and I says, "There you go." I can't remember if it was Angus or whatever his name was. You forget who they were actually, but he was a really good guy. Maybe it was John.
Remember, that's about 20 years ago.
Yeah, maybe it was John actually, John Houston. So John actually started doing one, and I just presented them with the business plan. Remember, a business plan. It doesn't need to be the be all and end all. It just needs to know they just need to know the numbers and how that all works.
Yeah.
I mean, most buy-to-let processes do that. But if you're looking for term loans, the only way you're going to get it over a corporate lender is actually have a proper kind of a business plan about what you want to do. Now, I've already established a track record. I'm going to the moon from that point in time in 2002 still, and I'm buying property like it's going out of fashion. But he said to me, he actually said to me one day when I presented the business plan, he went, "And are you going to tell me what you had for your breakfast as well?" And I went, I just looked at him, and he said, "Well," he says, "You've got to the point, Jim, where you actually put something in front of me, and I cannot say no, because you've given me every single reason to say yes."
Yeah.
See how that's done? If you give the bank manager every reason to say yes, they're never going to be able to. They're never going to be able to say no. How could they?
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly the reason I've got them on it right now. You know, both a couple of companies, actually bank managers and that, trying to do 1.9 million with me, and they're basically throwing themselves at me. And it's like, what? Why did you not do that years ago? I done that years ago when I first started. But that's track record is everything. So if you can establish a track record pretty quick in terms of what you're doing, just in the model you're doing and the way you're doing it, and then not take money out, they love it when you don't take money out. That's the one thing, because they realize that your income is not dependent on this. So therefore, they're more likely to invest in it with you and and what I mean is invest in it with you. They provide the lending because they are investing it with you, and they allow you to then go on and actually make a lot more money out of their money. That's their contribution to it. But they love the fact that you do not take money out of your buy-to-let business, and you have your mainstream. You know, your job is actually your income you survive on. That is a really good precedent to set for a buy-to-let lender. When they see things like that, they love it, and they'll give you a lot more money as a result and a lot more lending because they realize there's no risk in that, because that's on its own. They're also loan to value. They're hedged around about 60% loan to value, in terms of where they do their lending. Therefore, what risk have they got? You're not reliant on the income, so that's fine. And plus the fact they've got 40% equity in the game. You know, in terms of what they can do if they need to do a fire sale. And what I mean by a fire sale, if they need to say, we need to sell it all off quick so we can get our money back, that's a fire sale to the bank. Now, think about it, the credit crunch, the market dropped 20%. So you really think you're going to get to a point where you're going to have to exit with a 40% drop? Pretty unlikely.
Yep.
So that's why they love the fact that there's no risk involved in that for them at all, really. They can exit anytime it gets tough in the circumstances if they really need to. So there's a really good harmonious relationship built with the bank, and for that reason, for that very reason. Actually, he's asked me there, do you see a crash ahead? No. Probably just a mild realignment, I would call it. I'm predicting property prices probably this year will go down by the end of the year, probably between 5 and 10%. If that, however, there's indicators now saying to me that the economy isn't going to be hit as bad as it is, and inflationary pressure is only going to be, they're only looking to bring it down to about 5 or 6% this year, the inflation benchmark. So they're not going to be as draconian in terms of the way they try to bring it down by putting base rates up so high that it basically gets to the point where it tortures people. They can't spend anything, and therefore that's how our economy shrinks, and that's how the housing market shrinks as well at the same time, because people lose their jobs. But the object of the exercise is not. And to be honest, in this sort of market just now, the people that lose their jobs can easily probably pick up a job elsewhere, because there's more jobs on the market than there is people looking for jobs. The biggest threat to inflation this year, by the way, is going to be poaching from another employer and how much you're going to have to pay for that. That's what's going to push wage inflation up. Okay, so my first one, actually, I bought my limited company, was a 1-bedroom lower flat. I've still got it today. I bought it for £15,000. What did we get on that? Probably about, what, 375 or something like that?
Yeah, it was 375, yeah.
Yeah, so we get about 375 on that. So I bought it for 15 grand, and I've still got it at 15 grand, although I've actually used it to leverage in terms of getting further lending to reinvest to buy more property. I bought another 20 last year, and for that reason. So I leveraged it, and it made absolute sense. But I was getting deals from the bank on these rates, base plus 2%. So base plus 2%. So basically, you know, almost like a tracker. And I was getting them for 20 years, term loans. And they were term loans, remember? So I was paying down the debt. So basically what I was doing is, you know, I now it's completely different. But at that time, I was probably making about 50 grand profit, but only 25,000 was actually coming out in cash flow, because 25,000 was used to pay down the debt out of that profit in the limited company.
Yeah.
So that's how it works. And then I was depreciating my assets as well, which I've now found that you shouldn't depreciate. You shouldn't depreciate investment assets like houses. And the reason for that is because it makes your balance sheet look negative, or it makes it look really low. So when the bank comes to re-lend, or anybody comes to credit search you, therefore they actually think you've got less assets than you have. So it could take a wee bit a longer job. So you get a professional RICS surveyor to maybe go ahead and every 3 years. This is under the standard statement of standard accounting practice for investment properties. I think it was SSAP 13. If I'm right, somebody might correct me on it as an accountant. I don't know if the SSAPs exist anymore. But the statement of standard accounting practice 13 actually said that you shouldn't actually depreciate investment assets, investment properties. But I actually had a policy in the limited company of depreciating the properties. So it was giving me a false sense of security, or a false, that false sense that I actually didn't have enough to actually retire. But again, I come back saying I didn't want to focus on it, because then I probably would have made that leap earlier, which wouldn't have made me where I am now. I would have been a wee bit behind. And that was one actually. They had, these were all properties that they never had internal toilets. That's how old they were. They were built in the 1920s, so they didn't have internal toilets at the time. And it was only in the 1970s they actually started to do all that, and the government gave grants for it. And what they did was they sold these properties to the council. The council did all the upgrades and the grants, and then sold them back to the owner for the same price. And then that's how you got, a shower room at the end of the hall, which used to be a cupboard.
Yeah.
And then convert it to a shower room. That's why you got half of your living room taken away to in between the living room and the bedroom to actually be a bathroom with no window outside. That's how that happened. So they were good. They were good properties. They were downstairs, good for somebody that can't manage stairways either. So that was a great benefit. So that's one of the lessons I learned out of that one. The next one was actually a 2-bedroom upper, ex-local authority again, bought for $16,000 in 2002. And again, if you were to put these properties back on the market, well, they're selling for about 70,000 now, aren't they?
Yeah, I think it's about 65, 70 at least.
Yeah, so 2002, 20 years has passed from 16,000 to 60,000. So it's gone up 400%, effectively. 400% in terms of appreciation. Well, 300% added on to the 100% in the beginning. So basically, it's 300% in terms of the price that's gone up. Now, admittedly, I had done improvements, new kitchen, new bathroom, carpets and curtains, double glazing. So I did all that, but that's not included in that value. So, and it was all deductible because I had the tenant move in, and then I did it when the tenant was in there, and that's what made it deductible. If you do a refurbishment at the beginning, the Inland Revenue will question you about that, if that's deductible against your income, because the person hasn't lived in it yet. It's classed as a capital improvement. Therefore, you should capitalise it in the balance sheet. Therefore, if you're never going to sell, you'll never see the benefit of it. So you're better to actually get the tenant to move in and just say to them, once you've moved in a couple of months, I'll do all the refurbishments if that's okay with you, because I can now deduct that against my mainstream income. I can now deduct it in the year I actually do the work, and I won't need to capitalise it for that reason. So that's probably the lesson I learned out of that. And one of the ones as well, the downstairs neighbour was horrific, and probably is still today, and you'll know that yourself. This person, if they don't like the tenant upstairs, they'll do everything to be antisocial. That's a house owner. If they don't like them, nothing to do with the way they live. Just if their face doesn't fit, this person is a completely horrible person. Just horrible to anybody, and just about everything. And it's what you say, Richard. There's a stigma, and this guy has a stigma against people that rent property.
Yeah. It's against tenants. I don't know why he's like that, and I've seen it over the years.
He looks down on tenants. He looks down on these people. He looks down on people that rent, and actually actually looks at them as inferior. And I don't like that for that very reason. To be honest, you could really put a horrible tenant in there to get them back, but it's like, I'm no into that. I don't play that game with people.
No.
It's like, I'm getting the right tenant, and I want to build a good reputation over the years for providing service, for being a really good landlord, an outstanding landlord, and that's the reputation I want to have, and I want to precede me, and that's because that then means that a lot of people are actually join and come to stay with us. You're having that discussion with one person just now. Yeah. She wants a move from one of my existing properties because she can't manage the stairs anymore. And that's the great thing about having and looking after people for life, is you look after them very, very well and provide them with an exceptional service and do everything for them. They will just stay with you forever. And that's fine.
I had that conversation this morning with her, and she's been speaking to the council, but rather than go with the council, she says, I would rather stay with you. I need something on a lower level. So that speaks volumes if they want to stay with us rather than go with the council or whatever the council are offering her.
Now, in 2003, the next property I bought was a one-bedroom downstairs. And I actually bought it, and it was a repossession. But this is when I had to start sending someone else round to view them. This is when I had to start sending someone else round to view them. Why is that, Jim? Because everybody that knew me knew damn fine as soon as I went to see a property, it must be a winner. Because I had that reputation, within that short space of time, within what was 5 or 6 years, everybody started to realise that this guy has got the Midas touch. It's like everything this guy touches, it turns to gold every single time. And if I turned up to a viewing, everybody would be interested as a result.
I was going to say, did you feel that everybody was kind of following where you were?
Every time I appeared at a viewing, so I had to ask agents, is there any chance I can get a viewing on my own? This one was, no, it's a repossession. They never said it was a repossession, but I knew that. By the stickers on the toilets and stuff like that. That was all there still as well. So I actually sent one of my people that worked with me. I sent one of my staff when I was working at Macintosh, Michelle. I says, Michelle, go and do me a favour. Just pop down at lunchtime. Just have a quick look round, see what it's like. If you're happy with it, if you think, everything looks okay, nothing really jumps out at you, has been a real big problem. And that's when I started to take a leap of faith in other people doing this for me. In terms of viewing the properties, for that very reason. If I turned up, other people would be interested. Because they knew fine. Because every time I turned up to a viewing before that, it was like I ended up buying it, and I got it for a knockdown price because I used to put other people off. I used to do the open houses, and I used to walk around straight away and go, ooh, I didn't care about the fireplace and the heating system. It's like, is that working? It's what with the electrics? They didn't look very well, and that bit in the corner doesn't look very good. And everybody I never used to talk to anybody else about it.
I just talk to yourself
loud and talk through it with the agent. It was there doing the viewings, or the viewing lady, or the viewing person. And subsequently everybody would be overhearing that and going, and then I would get out the door and I'd be going down and going, so what's your thoughts to other people? And they'd go, oh, I'm no bidding on this. It's like, no, it looks like there's too much work. And I'm going, happy days. Happy days. And I'd managed to put everybody off psychologically, playing that game like Muhammad Ali used to do before he even got into the ring. Everybody else was out. And the guy had himself knocked out in the second round, and Muhammad Ali hadn't even thrown a punch yet. So that's the psychological process I used to do, and I do that. I do still do that sort of form of process today in terms of my negotiation for buying more property, but also my negotiation in a estate agency and a letting agency. When it's funny how all that skill set from industry and from what I've been doing in this has followed me into being an estate agent and also being a letting agent. And that's why people pay me a big premium to actually go and do the job for them.
It's funny how in an instant like that, how people can be so influenced and deterred from their own initial thoughts and perceptions of things just by obviously listening to overhearing what you're saying, and it's changed how. So I mean, I think a lesson there for people is to stick to your own mindset and what you're obviously working towards, and don't let other people influence you. That's quite a good thing, because like you say, they obviously lost out because they're listening to what you're saying. But
you know yourself more and more now, and I talk about this all the time. As when I do vlogs and blogs and everything, I say, look at the facts. Assess the facts before you make a decision on an emotional level. Look at the facts first. You may get the initial impact emotionally. Like your chimp kicks off because your chimp's the emotional side of you. You can't control the chimp, but the chimp goes to the human side of you, the logical, the part, the one that thinks about the facts and figures, and then it goes, is this justified? How I'm kicking off? And then you go, well, no, shut up, Bubbles. It's not to do with you. That's what my chimp's called. Shut up, Bubbles. It's like, no, this is the facts and figures, and there's no way it's like that either. So this is why I talk about quite a lot about the, the IMF and how they see the economy going for the world. About a third in recession, 2/3 are not going to be in recession as far as they're concerned. How the Bank of England thinks, all these think tanks, how they think, but also I look at the nuts and bolts about what it is. The nationwide, that Halifax is all coming out with doom and gloom and saying, property prices have dropped for the 4th month in a row. And it's like, I couldn't care less. I'm waiting for the land registry statistics to come out on the 18th. That's what I'm waiting on, because that's the be all and end all. It's what the land registry says, because that's the collation of every single property sale in the whole of the UK for that period. Not just what Nationwide or Halifax have with their own customers, because that's skewed, that information. Rightmove today has said property prices have gone up, according to their website, by £3,000. So what does that tell you? Another story, another mixed message. So this is why I look for the facts. So one person says one thing, one person says another thing, but where is the fundamental facts? Where is the basics? Where's the core value of this? Where is it coming from? And what should you believe and what should you not believe? And what should you take with a pinch of salt? This is what tells me about the economy and where things are going. Incidentally, that one, actually, you never ever saw this one because I flipped it eventually. So I rented it for a wee while after doing it up, and then I flipped it and I sold it 3 years later for 45 grand. Woohoo! Yeah. Bought it for 15, sold it for 45. All right. 200% profit on that, plus the fact I did earn a bit of income on it because I rented it for a wee while as well. And believe it or not, I actually looked at it the other day and I think it's actually completely empty, and it's been empty for years and years and years. So I don't think anybody's actually using it. So at some point in time, I might even buy it back. 15 grand again. So that's in 2003. And again, as I said, I sold it 3 years later. The next one actually was someone that, again, approached me. She was my downstairs neighbour. She was looking for a quick exit. She was just wanting the job done. The property was pristine inside. I know that. It was she always kept it pristine. It was a 2-bedroom lower flat. Again, it made sense. It was £26,000, Richard, for a 2-bedroom lower flat in 2003. It was renting for $420. The numbers made absolute sense to me. 26 grand, 420, times 12 is around about £5 a year. £5 a year top line income for a £26,000 investment is a pretty good return. Then if you leverage it, it's even better. So even at £5 divided by 26, you're talking about what, a 20% return. That's a 20% gross margin or gross yield. 20% gross yield, and then when you leverage it, that gross yield will go up to about 40 or 60%. See how the numbers work so well.
Yeah.
This is where you focus on. So she actually sold me that lock, stock, and barrel. And funny enough, I was doing furnished properties at that time, and I said the wee one that said it for me, the sweetener was, "You're going to leave all the white goods in your furniture. She had a nice suite and a fantastic bed. She just got everything's pristine in her house." I went, "You just got to leave all that stuff," and she went, "Yeah, okay then." So I got that.
Right.
But if you don't ask, you don't get. So you may as well ask for it if you're needing it. And then I don't want furniture now, to be honest, because it's like, or I'll just give it to the tenant, or I'll get Furniture Plus to come and pick it up, recycle it, and give it to their charity. And their charity, their guys will, recycle it and use it, and they'll make money out of it to raise for their charity to keep everybody in a job, all the voluntary system and the permanent workers as well, to get people off the basically off the drink.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of guys, and a lot of guys that work in it's mainly guys, to be honest. They've fallen by hard times. They've just become completely demotivated because they've lost their job. They've never had a job for years, and that's what places like Furniture Plus existed at that time for, to get all these people back into work. So you had maybe about 9 or 10 people that are employed full time there, but you had also about 20 or 30 volunteers that worked and volunteered as part of their process to get them back into the work. Get them back with some self-respect as well for themselves, because they felt they had a purpose. For men, I can't speak for women, but I'll guarantee you, for men, having a purpose is probably the most important thing in life. Having a purpose, a thing to drive towards, a thing to go for, is probably the most fundamental thing to their well-being. And if they don't have a purpose, most of them just turn to rack and ruin, and it's the drink or the drugs that get them.
I was just going to say, if people, men, like you say in particular, if they lose that purpose, whether it be losing a job or going through a divorce and things, it's an easy way to a downward spiral after that if you lose that purpose in your life.
It's inherently built into men. It's our psyche that we are providers. We are hunter-gatherers, and that's caveman days. You can't change that. That's psychology. That's hardwired into us. That's why your vision is foveal vision, which is direct on point. Whereas women are built as nurturers, okay, and home builders, and they are periphery vision. So they see bigger picture. They see either side, so they can see what's going on over here, whereas we can only see directly in front of us. That's why when you go to a cupboard as a man and go, "It's no there," and close the cupboard, and your wife or your partner comes along and opens it and goes, "There it is, right there." It's like every single time it's like, "I never saw that. It's like right in front of me, and I never saw that," because we are foveal vision
and pinpoint
things, and we're pinpointing for it because it's a hunter-gatherer thing. We don't have this peripheral vision that women have, which inherently built into them from nature. And that's the fundamental difference between the species. You can't change that at all. It's just the way we are. So, and that's why men tend to think long term and plan long term, whereas women actually think short term because they're looking after a family, or that's how they're built. That's how their psychology works.
Yeah.
I know there's people out there that say, "I don't want to have a family," and I know that's fine. I tell you what, as psychologists say, some professional psychologists say, wait till you get to about 40 and you've not got a family.
Yeah,
it begins to get a bit lonely. Your career doesn't do it for you anymore. But you'll get there when you get there, if you don't learn before then. So probably the most thing, that's when people started to come to me when I got that 2-bedroom lower flat.
Yeah.
This was when I thought, okay, this is a pure nostalgia thing. My sweetie shop came up for sale from when I was a kid.
I used to be a sweetie shop. I can't remember it being a sweetie shop. That's obviously way before.
Called Moz. It used to be called Moz, the sweetie shop, Moz. And before that, it was Alex Patrick Club Makers. From
I knew it was the club makers.
From
I didn't know that.
1829, this building was built in the 1800s, early 1800s, and there was no cavity. There was just two bricks together. That's how they were built, because they didn't know cavity wall insulation at that, or cavities at that time. They just put two bricks together and they built these buildings. It is a beautiful building. It is very multifunctional in how to use it. But it came up for sale. One of my friends actually had it. I actually worked for them for a wee bit of while, in a direct sales capacity, helping them sell some overseas houses. But they bought it and I bought it off them, because then it's like they didn't need it anymore. It's surplus to requirements. But it was my sweetie shop and I had complete nostalgia for it. And I didn't actually know what I was going to do with it, but I was getting it for 34 grand.
Really? That's good.
Yeah, it's a beautiful property.
That's a good
I was getting it for 34 grand at that time, and I thought, wow, that makes absolute sense. In actual fact, I tell you what, at some point in time, it could be an office. There was another couple of ventures that I lost. I actually took on the Salvation Army Hall, the old one at the back of North Street in Leven.
Yeah, North Street. Yeah, near Street.
It's now a cafe and all the rest of it.
Yeah,
I got the opportunity to buy that for 9 grand.
Really?
And it was accepted. Aye, think about that, because it's now 60. And I turned it down, when I bought it for 9, I actually committed to it. And then I got halfway into the transaction. I thought, God, even at 9 grand, I don't even know what I'm going to do with this building.
Yeah.
It's like, it's got a huge amount of work to do on it. And you know what? Do you know what I learned out of that one? It was more in the fact that I let that deal go. Even though I could have bought it at 9, and then I could have probably sold it 10 years later at about 50 or 60,000. What I learned from it, Indiana Jones at the I think it's the
Temple of Doom.
No, it's the one with the goblet. When he tries to get the Last Crusade.
All right, yeah.
Yeah. When he gets the goblet and he's at the end and they're trying to drink the goblet, and the knight says, drink from the right goblet, and all the rest of it. And then he drops the goblet and the earthquake happens, the ground opens, and the goblet's on the other side. And the first woman tries to cling for the goblet. This is a great metaphor for things in life that you sometimes have to let go. She wouldn't let go. And she suffered, and she lost her life for it. Where Indiana Jones at the end, it was actually a very, very prevalent in terms of what it is. What I know today is his father, his dad actually said to him, "Look, Indy, you need to let go, or you're going to die." And he let that go, and he lived as a result of that. And that's the same analogy I used with that. If I had taken that on, I think I would have had to spend at least 30,000 on it. Now, when you think about the price I was buying property for, 30,000 would actually buy me probably another 6 or 7 properties. Yeah. So it was all about letting something go to actually benefit even more about the return on investment you could have for later on. I think that's the lesson that told me. So Cali House, good addition. I've still got it today, and I rent it as a commercial property. It's a beautician that has the front, and it's rented all the time. And I'll keep the back for all my files and all my accounts and storage and everything like that. So that's where all that goes. But then equally as well, Richard, that's where I first started at Century 21 when I retired. So when I retired at 38, I actually opened there for the first time as Century 21. The beauticians that actually just moved out, Claire, I was in the beauty house there now in Scooney Road, and I was talking to her, and they were actually saying that if it wasn't for starting there, they wouldn't have been able to be where they are now. So and the new tenants love they love it in there as well. So they're just kind of starting now. So from a point of view, Richard, it's an incubator. It's an incubator for businesses. That premises, that's really where it comes into its own. And the fact that it allows people to get started in business and have their own premises. And then from there, it allows them to take that leap to the next stage. So they don't take that leap straight away because they don't have the customer base. So it's cost effective to run just now with the customer base while they build it up. And then when they get a bit bigger and they need a bigger premises, then they upgrade. That's what allows, because independent one-to-ones been in there as brokers. They're away to the Thompson House now. Then you have the beauticians that have been there. You have Eileen was there before.
Eileen
She
was
was
there, yeah.
doing all the aromatherapy and everything like that as well. So she ran her business from there as well. So it's been a great incubator business for a lot of local small businesses, and that's what I loved about that property, and myself included. If it wasn't for that, then I wouldn't have anywhere where I could have kept all the furniture, where I could have done everything else, and where I could have worked from where we first started. Because there was no way we were going to be able, Gordon and I, when we started Century 21, our estate agency, there was no way we were going to be able to afford to pay for a premises and rent off someone else. So in the beginning, it was like I never paid myself any rent. I actually just used that premises for us to get started and start to incubate
your own business, yeah.
Yeah, baby, incubate, baby. It's your baby. Your business is your baby, and that's really how it started. It's just an incubation process to the next stage to get into the next office and to move on from there. Next one, 2003 October, still limited company, 1 bedroom lower flat.
I don't think I've not been in this one either.
No, you never ever saw it.
I wasn't in this one, you know.
A 1 bedroom lower flat actually. So and I bought it for £11,500 in October 2003. Somebody just wanted rid of it.
Yeah,
and it was an easy gig for them to sell it to me. The only thing I could remember about this one is Norman died in it. One of my long-term tenants. Norman was absolutely fantastic. He was a great guy. It was Jimmy's brother-in-law. You know Jimmy? He used to live in Park of Wind.
All right, yeah. Jimmy was well.
Jimmy and Norman used to go about all the time, and Mary as well. Unfortunately, Mary's no longer here either.
Mary's away as well, yeah.
Yeah, but Mary, Norman, Jimmy, Donald, Amanda, David.
Donald's still with us.
Well, David as well. All these people have been with me for years in some shape or form in my properties and in my stock because I've looked after them all these years. Now, these have been people that have chosen to rent. They've always wanted to rent. They've never had any desire to go to a council house because I've looked after them all the time.
Yeah.
So I've done what I've needed to do, and that's why they're still with me. But I remember Norman, and I remember that was my first experience of someone passing away on the property and having to then have it cornered off because then the police then come along and say, look, we're going to have to, tape it off. You're not allowed access to the property. We're going to have to ascertain the cause of death.
Investigate the situation.
Yeah, he just basically died on the couch. Fell asleep, died. That was the end of it. I mean, he was a great guy. I like Norman. But that was it. And then subsequently, that was another one. 3 years later, bought it for 11.5, and I sold it for 41.
Yeah,
can't take that profit.
I know.
It's like and especially if you're getting a capital gains allowance. Well, actually, you're not getting a capital gains allowance on this one because it's a corporate. But then you're only paying the corporate rate of tax. You're not paying. There's no pushing into higher rate tax or anything. And again, it's money in the bank to do things later on. And I bought so many. I really mean I bought so many in the same street. I'd owned about 15% of the street at that point.
I think did you have like 22 of them or something at one point, or maybe?
No, more than that. I had about 30.
Was it more than that? Right, okay.
If it wasn't for me though, that street wouldn't be as good as it was because I put a huge investment into regenerating. I even paid for things like I even got the Bank of Scotland to pay for the play park with me. So Bank of Scotland gave a contribution and I gave a contribution to upgrade the play park and put gates on it and put grates in it so dogs wouldn't get into it and do their toilet anyway.
Yeah.
So the kids, because the play park was right in between all the houses and it was perfect for all the families just to watch the young children play in the play park and they'll be in a secure environment. And because the gates are shut as well and the trivets are in place so the dogs and that can't get over it and animals can't do the toilet in the park. So that was the great thing about having that type of park. That's what I loved about it. Was young families could actually, their kids go and play in some sort of safe environment or security and they can keep an eye on them, as well as having a back garden. But the great thing
that's all about
bonus.
That's where you look at always being a landlord who's integrated in the community and that whole function. So
very, very community oriented. And as I said before, I used to turn up to all the things to do with tenants